George Bush was no doubt a heroic pilot in World War II, even though to become a pilot without going to college at age 19, I'm sure it didn't hurt that his father was a senator. Now, that's no discredit to him. I mean, he was shot down. He was rescued. It's pretty crazy, a miraculous, unbelievable story, the way that fate can swing on such things. But from then on, he was an oil guy and then a deep state guy. He was a Politico, a loyal Republican with all the baggage that carries. He helped to convince Nixon to leave, and he was a deep state player from go after that. Hey, Matt Bracken here for the rest of the hour, and I'm going to start off just saying something nice about George Herbert Walker Bush before I get to the main point about what I think about the entire state funeral. I've got to be fair and admit that back in 1980, in the military, when Carter went out and Reagan Bush came in, it was like switching the lights on in a dead house. In SEAL team, you wouldn't believe, you would actually be shocked or embarrassed by how pathetic the equipment we had was. Coming out of the 70s, we were using busted up, old, worn out 1960s gear, Ingram MAC-10s. We had 38 revolvers that Humphrey Bogart might have used. Old, worn out Smith & Wesson Model 39s. Our boats were disgraceful. They were a joke. And Bush, being a speedboat guy himself, as a hobby, he saw some demonstrations of our gear, and I'll tell you what, for SEAL team, the equipment ramped up like you wouldn't believe. So at least for special warfare, that was really like the dawn of a new era. 1980, 81, that's when SEAL Team 6 came online. Really, we went from worn out Korean War crap, you wouldn't believe, Vietnam era, Korean War era stuff, to state-of-the-art, what we needed. So I will give the devil his due there. Now, watching the week-long state funeral, or like Kremlin funeral, as some have referred to it, it reminds me that when an empire is in collapse, that's when the palace guard is at its most extravagant. That's when the hats and uniforms get the fanciest, as it's in decline at the fringes of the empire. It just seems to go with the cycles of history. And the way that I look at it, I think that he was a great family man for sure. I admire his family overall. I mean, the way that they love one another. There's a lot to admire. But I heard on CNN, I think this was when the casket was being brought into the Capitol building, one CNN anchor very warmly and approvingly said to another that this type of a function was our United States secular religion. Read that as like an atheist or our state religion. So we can't have the pomp and circumstance, under the cross necessarily. So we'll put it in the Capitol with a flag and military honor guards every step of the way. And it's virtually our state religion. And I think that the greater message here, it's been said all week that, this is being ramped up in order to compare it to Trump and, what a brutal, crude, vulgarian he is compared to the much more, smooth and sophisticated Bush family. I think that this is the way that they signal to current politicians, this is how the deep state will reward you if you're on our team. If you are a populist and you resist the deep state, you're going to get nothing. You're going to get the scraps when, decades later when you pass away. But if you are a team player for the deep state, you're going to get all the bells and whistles. You're going to have honor guards, step by step, Air Force One, trains, you name it. Nothing will be out of reach. So this is a signal to current politicians to, stay on board the deep state team in order to get the big reward down the road. And now I'm old enough to remember the first Gulf War, and it's little known, and maybe some of you younger guys can dig into the history a little bit. But at the time, starting in '88, we had a female ambassador in Iraq named April Glaspie, and it's controversial to this day that she either misread cues or the wrong signals were given. But there were meetings between her and Saddam Hussein and his foreign minister Tariq Aziz, who was a Christian, by the way. It was a pretty secular state for the Middle East under Saddam Hussein. That the Kuwait had been abusing this the vague borders between Kuwait and Iraq, and had been slant drilling into rich oil fields in southern Iraq, basically stealing oil from Iraq, greatly angering, naturally Saddam Hussein. And when they were discussing this, and Saddam Hussein had been moving troops to the south, that apparently April Glaspie did not, firmly say, look, if you move any tanks into Kuwait, we're going to go at you full force. And there might have been poor translations or misread communications, but a lot of people think that Saddam Hussein took it as a signal that the United States wouldn't go to the mat if Iraq settled their differences with Kuwait over this disputed oil in the north of Kuwait and the south of Iraq. Now, on our side, we say, well, we never meant that they should take the whole country. But it seems that under George Bush, there was at least some kind of a miscommunication which led to the entire situation. Certainly, that wasn't the firm message given. Some conspiracy theory-minded people would say that he was sort of like, I wouldn't say lured or baited or tricked, but he certainly was given the impression, many think that he was given the impression that the United States wouldn't mind if Iraq chewed off part of Kuwait. And he ended up taking the whole country. Desert Shield and Desert Storm was the result. That was the first big shock and awe, and the Norman Schwarzkopf and the entire deal we saw. But that led to Saddam Hussein eventually being invaded under his son, 15 or so years later. But yeah, there's a lot of history. It goes way back. George Bush was no doubt a heroic pilot in World War II, even though to become a pilot without going to college at age 19, I'm sure it didn't hurt that his father was a senator. Now, that's no discredit to him. I mean, he was shot down. He was rescued. It's pretty crazy, a miraculous, unbelievable story, the way that fate can swing on such things. But from then on, he was an oil guy and then a deep state guy. He was a Politico, loyal Republican, with all the baggage that carries. He helped to convince Nixon to leave, and he was a deep state player from go after that. Ambassador to China, director of the CIA, and then vice president and president. He lived through some very tumultuous times, and I wouldn't go so far as to call him an evil guy. Who knows what dealings the Bush family had all along, but there's no question he was a New World Order guy. But you have to think in terms of globalism now. Globalists won't wear on their sleeve, I'm for a one world government. They'll speak in code like New World Order, but they'll wrap themselves in the flag. They'll wear the flag on their lapel. But when they're talking about New World Order, they're talking about superseding national sovereignty and moving into a global order. And that's what we'll cover in the next section when we come back from the break.
Introducing the final and biggest sale of 2018, InfoWars is proud to introduce the 12 Days of Christmas, and it's bigger than any previous sale before, as this sale just escalates as we attempt to clear out all of our amazing inventory to escape the dreaded inventory tax at the end of the year. So get great products and help fund the InfoWar right now with the 12 Days of Christmas that is special amongst a group of incredible sales. Up to 75% off on top sellers, including free shipping, double Patriot points, and unprecedented daily specials. Santa Claus isn't real, but the New World Order and the globalists trying to destroy our nation's sovereignty. And trying to shut down the free press is. And that's why when you get great products at InfoWarsStore.com, you don't just give yourself the gift of high quality supplements or storable foods or incredible water filtration. No, you give yourself the gift of funding the First Amendment in a desperate attempt to save this country. Even though InfoWars has delivered in the fight against tyranny like no other, we're not just asking for your support. We're asking you to have a 360 win because this is the biggest sale of the year. We're extending store-wide free shipping up to 75% off of best-selling items, double Patriot points, and for the 12 days of Christmas leading up to Christmas, every day we have one particular special that is up to 75% off. Now more than ever, InfoWars needs your support to continue to promote the spirit of liberty and Americana that truly is the Christmas spirit. When you shop at InfoWarsStore.com, you don't just get incredible sales during the 12 days of Christmas. You fund the very tip of the spear in the fight against the globalists. Today's 24-hour only special at InfoWarsStore.com is the last run 55% off of Super Male and Super Female Vitality. It's hard to procure it anymore, so we're discontinuing it, even though it's the best seller at InfoWarsStore.com. I want to thank you all again for making the entire InfoWar possible. Again, you are the resistance.